He stood in the doorway like a promise that had finally kept its word, calm, controlled, uniform pressed sharp enough to silence doubt. He said he was home for a few days before deployment. He said he did things he could not talk about. He said this was real. By the time the money moved, the future was already sold. Joint trips discussed, houses bookmarked, children named in passing, like jokes that lingered too long. When the first bank alert hit, it sounded small, a glitch, a timing issue. He blamed clearance delays, government systems, missions that ran late and paid later. Then the story shifted. Navy turned into intelligence. Intelligence turned into medicine. Each version arrived with confidence and proof that looked solid until it did not. Accounts drained quietly, credit stretched thin, questions met with pressure and affection in the same breath. When he disappeared, he did not vanish, he reset. New name, new woman, same line, same future. By the time the truth surfaced, it was not about one man. It was about how many lives collapsed before anyone knew they were sharing him. Chapter 1. The Man Who Looked Like a Future. He introduced himself without hurry. His voice stayed level. His posture stayed calm. He listened more than he spoke, and when he did speak, he chose details that sounded lived in. He said he worked overseas. He said he could not always explain where he was going or why. He said it made relationships hard, but he was trying anyway. The first woman who would later come forward met him through a dating app in early spring. She was cautious by habit. She worked full-time. She paid her bills. She did not chase strangers who talked big. What caught her was how little he pushed. No pressure, no rush. He asked about her work. He remembered details from one conversation to the next. He followed through when he said he would call. He told her his name was Derek Alldred. He said he was a Navy SEAL on temporary leave. He did not lead with hero stories. He framed it as a burden. Long deployments, missed holidays, friends lost overseas. He said the job required discipline and silence. It explained why pieces of his life came in fragments. He showed up wearing a uniform once briefly, not to impress. He said he had to pick something up on base and would be late. He sent a photo instead. The image looked right, the patches looked right, the posture looked trained. She did not know enough to question it, and she did not feel the need to. The relationship moved at a speed that felt intentional, not reckless. He waited weeks before talking about the future. When he did, he framed it carefully. He said he wanted stability after his next assignment. He said he was tired of temporary living. He asked her where she imagined herself in 5 years. He listened to the answer and reflected it back in pieces. He learned what she wanted and repeated it with small variations. A house near her sister, a dog before kids, travel when schedules allowed. He did not promise immediately. He said maybe. He said we will see. That restraint made the later promises feel earned. His absences came with warning. He would say he was leaving in 3 days. He would say communication might be limited. He would say he hated that part of the job. When he went quiet, it fit the story he had already told. When he returned, he acted relieved to be back. He did not deflect questions. He answered just enough. The first financial request came after weeks of consistency. He did not ask for help. He framed it as inconvenience. He said his bank account had been flagged due to overseas activity. He said it happened sometimes. He said the funds were there, but access was delayed. He asked if she could cover a flight he needed to change last minute. He said he would pay her back within days. The amount was not large. She hesitated, then agreed. He sent a screenshot that appeared to show pending reimbursement. He thanked her once. He did not dwell on it. 2 days later, he sent money back plus extra for the trouble. That return mattered. It made the story solid. After that, he began to integrate finances slowly. He suggested shared planning. He talked about consolidating once his next deployment ended. He said his credit was complicated because of frequent address changes. He joked about government paperwork being a mess. He never asked for full access. He suggested convenience. He talked about buying a house together someday. He asked her to look at listings for fun. He commented on neighborhoods. He asked what she liked and what she did not. He said he had money set aside, but moving it around was not simple with his job. He framed obstacles as temporary. The tone changed when stress entered the story. He said a teammate had been injured. He said the unit was under pressure. He said things were tense. He leaned on her emotionally. He shared controlled vulnerability. Not too much, enough to deepen trust. When he mentioned money again, it came tied to urgency. He said a payment had been misrouted. He said it could affect his clearance if it was not resolved quickly. He did not threaten. He sounded frustrated with systems, not desperate. He asked if she could float a larger amount briefly. He said it would be returned before the end of the week. She asked questions this time. He answered them. He used language that sounded official. He referenced processes and delays. He said she could say no. He emphasized choice. That made saying yes feel voluntary rather than pressured. The money moved. Then more. Credit cards were discussed. He said having one in her name would simplify travel bookings when he was in transit. He said it was temporary. He said it was about efficiency. He said everything would be cleaned up once his next assignment finished. Small inconsistencies appeared, but did not land at first. Dates shifted slightly, a story repeated with a different location. He blamed fatigue, he blamed time zone confusion. He laughed it off. He never became defensive. He never raised his voice. When she mentioned a friend who served in the military, he expressed interest but avoided specifics. He said operational security limited what he could share. He said it was safer not to compare notes. He framed silence as protection. The relationship intensified. He talked about engagement without setting a date. He talked about children in abstract terms. He used phrases like, when this is over and after the next cycle. He made the future feel close enough to touch, but always one step away. The financial impact accumulated quietly. Payments here, transfers there, credit usage justified as temporary. He kept reassuring her it was almost done. He spoke with confidence about timelines. He said paperwork was clearing. He said the end was in sight. The first clear red flag came when she attempted to verify a detail on her own. A unit name did not align with what she found online. A base he mentioned did not match deployment schedules she could see publicly. When she asked him about it, he did not panic. He said public information was often outdated. He said misinformation was common by design. Doubt entered, but it did not dominate. Too much time had passed. Too many moments had felt real. He had met her family. He had sent gifts. He had been present in ways that mattered emotionally. It was easier to assume confusion than deception. When the next financial emergency hit, it arrived faster and heavier. He said an account had been frozen entirely. He said it was a clerical error tied to his identity being flagged incorrectly. He said it would be fixed, but not before a critical deadline. He asked for help again, this time with urgency in his voice. She hesitated longer. He sensed it. His tone shifted. He did not threaten, but he expressed hurt. He said he felt questioned. He said trust mattered. He said he would understand if she could not help, but it would change how he saw the relationship. She transferred the money. Within weeks, communication patterns changed. Messages slowed, calls shortened, explanations became less detailed. He said he was under increased restrictions. He said he could not talk freely. He said he would explain everything soon. Then he disappeared. No goodbye, no final message. Accounts he had used went silent, numbers disconnected. The uniform photos stopped, the future talk vanished. At first, she assumed something had gone wrong overseas. Days passed, then weeks. The financial reality surfaced slowly. Balances she did not recognize, charges she had not made, credit damage that did not align with a temporary favor. She replayed conversations, she checked dates, she pulled screenshots. She realized how much of the story depended on trust rather than verification. She realized how carefully that trust had been built. At this stage, nothing was proven. No investigation had begun. No pattern had been identified. There was only one woman, one man, and a future that had dissolved without explanation. The question left hanging was simple and devastating. Had the man she loved ever existed at all? Chapter 2. The pattern beneath the charm. The second woman did not know about the first. She lived in a different state. She worked a different job. She met him under a different name. The introduction was clean, the tone familiar. He listened. He remembered. He followed through. He did not present himself as military this time. He said he was a doctor, trauma surgery, long hours, on call. He framed it as a life built around crisis and control. He said relationships suffered because of it. He said he was ready to slow down. The details shifted, but the structure stayed the same. Early consistency, measured attention, no rush. He waited before mentioning the future when he matched it to what she wanted. Stability, respect, a partner who showed up. Within weeks, he spoke about stress at work, hospital politics, administrative problems, billing delays tied to insurance systems. He did not ask for money immediately. He complained, he vented. He let sympathy form on its own. The first transfer came framed as temporary, a payroll issue, a billing cycle mismatch. He said it embarrassed him to ask. He said he would understand if she said no. She said yes. He paid her back quickly. Again, that mattered. It lowered her guard. It made the next request easier. A third woman met him while the second still believed he was hers. This time he said he worked in intelligence. Federal contracting, sensitive assignments, long stretches of silence required by policy. He framed secrecy as safety. He framed questions as risk. The same phrases appeared. You would not understand. I wish I could tell you more. One day I will explain everything. He spoke like it was delayed by duty, not deception. Each woman believed she was the only one. Each believed the distance was temporary. Each believed the stress came from external systems, not internal lies. Financial requests escalated in similar ways, first inconvenience, then urgency, then pressure wrapped in affection. He never demanded outright. He expressed disappointment. He expressed hurt. He suggested that trust should already exist. Credit cards followed a pattern. He framed them as tools, easier booking, easier travel, easier handling of expenses while he was unavailable. He promised to settle balances quickly. He said the money was there. Access was the problem. Vehicles appeared next. He said his credit was complicated. Government contracts, address changes, security flags. He asked for help securing transportation temporarily. He said it would be in his name soon. It never was. When questions surfaced, he deflected calmly. He never exploded. He never panicked. He blamed systems. He blamed bureaucracy. He blamed enemies that could not be verified. He framed doubt as stress added to an already difficult life. The women began to notice small inconsistencies independently. A hospital that did not list his name, a license number that did not match, a unit designation that did not exist. Each discovery was explained away in isolation. He always had an answer. He always sounded prepared. The pattern only became visible when silence followed. One woman stopped hearing from him entirely. Another noticed he was suddenly unavailable during times he once prioritized. A third saw social media activity that did not align with his supposed location. They began searching quietly, not together, not yet. Each started with private doubt. One found a profile photo reused under a different name. Another found a similar story posted in an online forum about relationship fraud. Another noticed identical phrasing in messages she had saved. Promises, apologies, timelines. The first connection happened by accident. A message sent to the wrong inbox, a name that did not match, a face that did. Two women spoke by phone. They compared notes cautiously. Dates overlapped. Stories matched too closely to be coincidence. The professions changed, but the structure was identical. They shared screenshots, voice messages, bank transfers, credit statements. Each piece added weight. The pattern was no longer theoretical. It was documented. More women surfaced through quiet outreach, private messages, careful questions. Some did not respond, others did. The scope widened. Different cities, different years, same man. The name Derek Alldred appeared more than once, but not always. Sometimes it was different. Sometimes it was close enough to pass. The face remained consistent, the voice unmistakable. Financial damage varied, but the impact followed similar lines. Maxed credit, loans taken under pressure, savings drained in increments that felt manageable until they were not. None of it felt like a robbery at the time. It felt like helping someone you loved. The emotional aftermath hit unevenly. Some women blamed themselves, some blamed him entirely, some went numb. All struggled with the same question. How did this happen without me seeing it? They did not rush to authorities immediately. Shame slowed them. Uncertainty complicated things. Each had believed a different version of him. Each worried her case would sound unbelievable. What changed was documentation. Together, the stories stopped sounding isolated. Together, the evidence showed intent rather than accident. They organized timelines. They marked overlaps. They highlighted repeated language. They noted the same emotional pressure points being used again and again. This was not a series of bad relationships. It was a system. The women compiled files, bank records, message threads, call logs, photos of uniforms and work badges that no longer seemed incidental. They prepared themselves for disbelief. When they approached law enforcement, the response was cautious. Jurisdictional lines complicated things. Crimes crossed state borders, identities shifted, some losses fell into civil gray areas rather than clear criminal statutes. But the pattern mattered. Investigators began verifying credentials. Medical boards returned no matches. Military records did not support his claims. Intelligence affiliations were non-existent. Each identity collapsed under scrutiny. What remained was a man who moved easily between roles, selecting whichever carried the most authority in a given moment. Soldier, doctor, agent. Each came with built-in trust and built-in excuses. As the investigation widened, more victims emerged. Some losses were small, some were devastating. All were intentional. By the end of the second phase, the question was no longer whether deception occurred. That was clear. The question now was whether the system would catch up to him before he reset again. He had vanished before. He had changed names before. He had moved on before. This time, there was a record following him, and it was growing. Chapter 3, Exposure, Arrest, and the Cost That Remains. The file grew heavier before it went anywhere. It was not one story, it was many, layered together, each incomplete on its own. When combined, they formed a pattern that no longer depended on belief. Dates overlapped, messages repeated, transfers lined up across states. The same promises appeared in different voices, sent to different women, weeks apart. Investigators moved slowly at first. Jurisdiction mattered, so did thresholds. Some losses fell into civil disputes, some into fraud, some into identity crimes. The challenge was not proving harm, it was proving intent across time and distance. The women stayed organized, they kept records clean, they resisted speculation, they separated what they knew from what they suspected. That discipline mattered when authorities began checking claims. Military service came first. Requests went out. Records came back empty. No enlistment that matched. No deployment history. No unit affiliation that aligned with the stories told. The uniform photos did not prove service. They proved access to costume and confidence. Medical credentials followed. State boards returned no license. Hospitals listed did not recognize the name. Trauma surgery logs did not match his claimed schedules. Billing delays he described did not align with how payroll actually worked. The story failed under routine verification. Intelligence claims collapsed last. There was nothing to confirm because nothing existed. No contractor record, no clearance trail, no footprint that matched the authority he invoked so easily. What remained was a man who had borrowed trust by wearing roles that discouraged questioning. Soldier, doctor, agent. Each came with built-in excuses for silence. Each explained absence without requiring proof. As warrants formed, investigators tracked addresses. Some were temporary, some were borrowed. Some belonged to women who had believed he was building a life with them. Vehicles tied to his movements appeared under names that were not his. Phone numbers rotated. Email accounts vanished. When he was located, the arrest did not come with spectacle. There was no chase, no confrontation that matched the damage left behind. He was taken into custody during a routine moment when the story he was telling someone else paused long enough for reality to catch him. The name on record matched one version of himself. The face matched all of them. Charges followed where evidence allowed. Fraud, identity-related offenses, financial crimes supported by documentation rather than emotion, each count tied to records that did not depend on memory alone. In court, timelines mattered, messages were read aloud, transfers displayed on screens. Promises repeated back-to-back, stripped of context, sounded different. The future talk lost its warmth when presented as a pattern. Victim statements were not dramatic, they were measured. Some spoke briefly, some could not finish. The harm was not only financial, it was structural, credit damaged, careers disrupted, trust fractured in ways that did not heal quickly. The total losses were calculated through bank records and credit reports. The number mattered for sentencing, but it did not capture the full cost. It did not measure nights spent replaying conversations. It did not measure the hesitation that followed in every relationship afterward. The court recognized the pattern. Sentencing reflected repetition rather than a single lapse. The system named what had happened without mythologizing it. The man at the center of it all showed little outward reaction, no dramatic apology, no explanation that accounted for the years. He listened, he nodded, he said little. For the women, the outcome brought mixed relief. Validation came with finality. The story was no longer unresolved, but resolution did not restore what had been taken. Credit repair took years. Legal cleanup dragged on. Trust did not return on a schedule. Some rebuilt quietly, some spoke publicly, some chose never to talk about it again. Each response was valid. None erased the fact that manipulation had been calculated, not accidental. What lingered was the understanding that deception of this kind thrives on ordinary hope, the desire for partnership, the willingness to believe consistency equals truth, the instinct to help someone you think you know. There was no single failure that allowed it to happen. There was a sequence, each step small enough to rationalize, each choice made in good faith. The case closed on paper, the sentence was served. The records remain. But the cost did not end with the verdict. For those who lived it, the lesson was not about spotting a better lie. It was about how easily trust can be engineered when authority is performed well and questions are framed as betrayal. The future he sold never existed. What remains is the work of rebuilding a life that no longer assumes honesty is guaranteed.